Pokemon!
Friendship will never die.
It's Pikachu!
You're gonna see it's a destiny.
Singing
You got
clip.
a friend in me. My darling, you got a friend in me. 2, 3.
Yeah. That's everything and more about the Nostalgia Alchemist, a retro streamer, lovely, lovely friend of the Waba fam. Waba speechless. I mean, yeah, I am. He's an excellent entertainer. We love him dearly. Let's give him a call. I studied fake trumpet in 3rd grade. Hello.
Hey, hold on one sec.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, let me see if I can see you at the same time, or your camera is linked to your stream.
Yeah.
Hello, okay. Am I coming in clear? Hello, 1, 2, 3.
You're good.
Wonderful.
All right, you ready?
I am ready to rock and roll. Let's go.
All right. Oh. Here we go. 5th guest. Nostalgic Alchemist. Let's go. Boom. Hello there.
Hey, how are you? Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining Waba today for all of the wonderful chatters I've been able to catch so far, everybody, except I came in a little bit late to our 3:30 Eastern broadcaster. But it's been wonderful to hear everybody. And Waba, it's been a while since I've been on one of your mental health talks, so it's so nice to be back. Thank you again for having me.
It's been a while.
It's been a while since I could talk to Waba here.
I don't even know the lyrics, but you're good, mate. How's it going, Journey? I love you, man. How you been?
Oh,
How's
man,
everything?
love you too. Thank you so much for having me back on. And everybody who is watching at home, hi, my name is Jeremy. I used to run a brand called It's Nostalgic Magic, but I had to stop using it because it was already trademarked. I was trying to trademark everything, and it all fell through. Somebody else had it, and I had to drop everything right then and there. Luckily for me, all of my monetization was done under my personal name and not an LLC or a limited or a brand. So it was just me. So I got very lucky. But I had to switch brands very quickly. So I had to do an entire pandemic's worth of branding into 3 weeks. So
Oh my god.
I've been pretty tired. So my name is Jeremy, and I am the Nostalgia Alchemist. About myself. Well, very briefly, I have been trained in the arts since a very early age, dancing, singing, acting. I have I have a SAG-AFTRA card that I attained when I was doing a web series at one point that unfortunately fell through, but I am now able to use it as a bit of a lean into voiceover. I did not quite get my equity card, which is the Union for Broadway, but I have a very storied semi-pro professional career on stage, being a director, choreographer, performer. So a lot of my entertainment background had to be transferred over to internet entertainment, which is what we're doing now here on Twitch and YouTube and podcasts. So I started It's Nostalgic Magic as a radio show that I used to do in college, and then I brought it over to all of the aforementioned platforms. And then, of course, recently I had to switch over to a different brand. So I am very excited now to be the Nostalgia Alchemist, and I am always here for whenever you remember why.
I love it. You plug yourself so perfectly. Absolutely adore it.
Oh, you know, rehearsal. I can't. I have rehearsal.
Such a mood. So anyway, my friend, all things considered, I hope you've been well. I hope your family's been well and everything's been going great in your life. But we're here to talk today about mental health in general and just, you know, how it has affected you as a content creator, as an entertainer, and vice versa, how your mental health has affected that content creation process.
Sure. So let me just start by saying that I have taken great strides recently in the last 2 years since the pandemic actually started to work on my mental health, because my entire life and my lifestyle stopped dead. And I think a lot of that happened for a lot of people, especially in the performing and the entertainment industry. Everything just stopped dead. And that, if you did not get through the larger portion of this ongoing pandemic without being mentally or physically scathed, you're lying, and you're lying to yourself.
Yeah,
and anyone you talk to is going to tell you, yeah, I took this up, I quit my job, I did this, and it was pretty much the same with me. And what was really funny about our previous guest, Polly, correct?
Yes, Polyphemus.
Yes, Polly. Yes. So when you were speaking to Polly, I actually work a similar day job just to pay the bills. I work at a very well-known bookstore, which of course I can't mention, but I work at their warehouse. So I also do a lot of the machinery. I work in ICQC and receiving, so I do a lot of that kind of work. And it's really cool that I'm able to like take a lot of those different kinds of moments throughout the day to just like process things in my head. And that time actually is something that I always say, give the gift of time. So if I have the time, I'm going to take it as a gift. It's going to be used to the utmost worth that we have, because we only have time. That's all we have. And using that mentality has allowed me to play out a lot of different scenarios in my head, whether they be positive, negative, creative. I'm able to really inwardly focus and say, okay, what is it that I need right now? And what good can I use with it? And that's really positive. And that's really
super
plausible.
Powerful like mindset, and it's a super powerful like refocusing and recentering tool.
It did not come without this stack of books that I actually want to go through.
Hell yeah, stack of books, let's go.
So first of all, so everybody watching at home, if there is at any point you want me to show up a book again, if it interests you, I want to just show you a bunch of reading that I am doing, have yet to do, and have done, so that maybe you yourself could use some of the things that I've used to work on my insight and work on my I guess we can call it mental stability in a way, you know, because a lot of us at times are going to feel unstable. Like I'll give you a perfect example, Waba, and you'll actually probably appreciate this. At one point I was able to visualize my anxiety and my depression. Okay. So let's just pretend that this is a full glass, like a glass. Not like a cup or like a plastic, like a glass of water.
It's a glass half full, half
and
empty.
It's right there on the edge of the table. And then someone comes along and does this. That's my anxiety. And when it falls and breaks and shatters and there's water everywhere, that's the depression. So I was able to take this visual concept, and the funny thing too is I actually visualized that and saw something extremely similar from somebody on TikTok, which is really cool that someone else like has that kind of same like, visualization. So taking that visualization, I'm able to say, okay, how do I prevent the glass from shattering, even if there are outside influences that are going to keep bumping that forward? How do I push it back? Let's talk. So this was the first thing that I wanted to show. This here is a workbook, and I actually like the For Dummies series. It actually just breaks down things very clearly. Yeah, it's great. It's the anxiety and depression workbook for dummies. And let me just start by saying that the reason I started putting this book up first is because I'm putting in the work. You're not going to read something and then have some kind of a epiphany or enlightenment or a revelation. You have to put in the work.
And this goes with therapy too, and I tell people that and they don't want to believe me, you know, or sometimes they might say like, oh, Waba, you're preaching about therapy and self-care as if it's going to fix absolutely everything. I'm like, no, it's not. You have to like do the work and do good for yourself.
You know, it's also finding the right therapist, and your relationship with your therapist is also extremely important, because
setting boundaries, setting expectations,
and also getting homework too. If you think about it, if your therapist doesn't give you things to work on outside, then you're just going into vent.
Right.
And you know, you can trauma dump on friends. You shouldn't really trauma dump on broadcasters. We'll get to that later. But this was a really big first step for me. I really enjoyed going through the exercises in this book. Trigger warning, it does ask you to bring up your past in some of the exercises.
Yeah.
You have the option, of course, to skip them, but I didn't. I wanted to really proceed my way through the book as is written so that I could really get the most out of my $20. You know what I mean? Like, I'm investing in myself. Right. So this self-investment helped me out a lot. I'm gonna just stack the books right here. I just got a new Nintendo OLED Switch.
Oh, really?
So I'm literally in the middle of transferring all of the stuff from one micro SD card over to the other, so I can play Kirby in the Forgotten Land tonight.
Hell yeah.
This is another book that I picked up, which is actually my outward mental health. This book is called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi.
Yes.
And
Beautiful.
I just started reading it, but I think I'm going to get through some of my other self-help books first before I get into this, because this is a little bit more outward than inward. So I don't want to give myself my own mental juxtaposition quite yet. So This is a book that is definitely on my to-read list. If you are into figuring out how you yourself can make a distance when it comes to, you know, a lot of inequalities out there, and not just with racism, but with transphobia and homophobia and a lot of things that, you know, that people use fear as power. This is how to like get over that and try to like say to certain economic systems, nah, but my way of doing things is coming from a more enlightened and more well-read place instead of just going down a rabbit hole, because that could be dangerous, as we all know.
Absolutely.
This book is the one I'm reading currently. Now, this is one I actually wanted to talk about because for a very long time, I've had a temper problem. I had a very tough, very hard temper problem.
Really?
And it ruined a lot of my chances to have friendships, personal and professional connections and relationships.
Right, absolutely.
And you know, if you have a tendency to have a very short fuse, I do recommend seeking some way to defuse that, because you're going to find that your ability to checklist manifesto your way into saying to yourself, is this really a priority for me to get this upset?
Yeah.
So this book is really awesome. I am finding so far so many different methods and concepts of how to just prioritize where my emotions need to be at the right place at the right time, or in the wrong place or in the wrong time.
Can you read it off again to us?
Yes. Emotional Intelligence 2.0, written by Dr. Travis Bradbury and Dr. Gene Greaves. And they are the co-founders of Talent Smart EQ, which is considered by them the world's most powerful EQ assessment on the internet. So after I read this, I'm going to do the EQ test. So I'm going to do it before I start chapters and do it after chapters. So it's pretty cool. This is a book that my big brother, I should say, he was my choreographer and then became one of my best friends when I was still in high school. He passed on about a month before my son was born in 2017. And he lent me this book. Oh, it's all good. It's this tall, beautiful, big black man who was a beautiful dancer, went to SUNY Purchase. He's a brilliant choreographer, really lost a huge light in the world, definitely. But he gave me this on loan, and then he passed. So I guess now belongs to me. This is a book called Life 101, Everything We Wish We Had Learned About Life in School, but Didn't. So a couple of the chapters in this book are very self-explanatory. Life is a metaphor. Who is the real teacher? Maybe you are more than your mind. The attitude of gratitude. The pretender, or all life in the fast lane. Is there more going on than just our senses perceive? It's an old book. I believe it was written in the 90s. But still, there's a lot of different parts of this book. It takes strength to be happy. Hurry up and be patient. Meditate, contemplate, or just sit. You know, like those kinds of things. So I went through this book about a couple of years ago. Yeah, and this was a pretty cool book. It's definitely a thick read, so definitely read it over time. Nice. You know, this is a lot to digest. I'm gonna actually put that here since it's
I feel like you could meditate on each one of those.
That's what this book is basically
Yeah.
for. You know, you take these huge chunks of chapters and you just kind of like have to sit with it for a while. That's why this book took me such a long time to get through, because there's just a lot to digest in here. And there's a lot of contradictions that you have to kind of work out, because it'll tell you one thing in one scenario and then you're like, oh, but maybe that scenario is not quite right for this situation. So I have to switch over. This is actually one of my favorite books that I read in the past couple of months. This is by Stephen Levine. It's called A Year to Live. How to Live This Year as If It Were Your Last. Now, this is actually a little bit of a dangerous title because of suicide, and of course we want to encourage you to use suicide prevention if you can. I am a victim of just a moment. I myself am a victim of once contemplated, twice attempted. So this was definitely a book that I had to like slowly get through, even though it's a little thin. But there are a lot of great talking points in here that actually put in perspective, if you really did have 365 days out of the year, are you really going to wear them all out? And this book's going to encourage you to try to do that. It kind of puts you in tune with your own mortality. And for us as gamers, sometimes that's very tricky, specifically when it comes to types of games that we might play if we're broadcasting. Games like Overwatch or Call of Duty Modern Warfare or Mad World, Mortal Kombat, ultra violent games where violence is nullified, and it's brought to a point where a headshot or a kill shot, there's no emotional content or connection behind that. So, you have to put, specific games that we play into perspective. We as adults know that this is pretend, and these are worlds created for certain specific experiences for specific types of people.
Right.
Is it for everyone? No, of course not. But that's why they're games and they're storytelling, and every game is different for every player. Because that's how the industry is designed. But when it comes down to, connecting with your own mortality, I had to question why I really didn't like a lot of first-person shooters. And I was like, this is too realistic. I do feel my anxiety build up when I'm trying to like sneak around corners and do this and that. I feel the immersion. And there's no backpedaling on the hard work that the developers have put into making these games look and feel and sound really good. And they are. Right. But they're not for everyone. So this book really did put me in touch with like my own mortality. And that was a really cool opportunity to like feel that out and say like, wow, I really do feel empathy for a person going through XYZ and knowing that their days are numbered. Everyone's days are numbered. Our tomorrows are never promised, and no one's going to live forever. So I had to really like delve into that and kind of like get into a nitty gritty with all that.
And it's a really scary thing because, that brings up a lot of existential dread for us.
Yeah,
it's like,
a really good book.
What does happen? Like, you're going to be remembered? Does this world actually exist? All the other kind of stuff,
Yeah, Jim Henson always said, as long as I can leave the world knowing that I've made some kind of a change, I know I've done good. And he's right. I mean, look, we got the Muppets, you know what I mean? Like, among other things. Waba, I'm shouting you out because this was a book that you posted. And this is It Didn't Start With You. How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How to End the Cycle. This is on my to-read list.
You haven't read it yet, but I looked at it. I scanned it over, and I'm like, this is actually a really good read.
This is actually very good for me to start, and when I do, because a lot of my trauma starts with how confused I was as a child because I wasn't able to properly articulate my emotions. In my family, outside of my family. I guess you could say pathological liar, but in a way I was performing and I wasn't really on stage. So I made up these stories around friends and around family to kind of get reactions and stuff. But I don't think it was coming from a malicious, like, I'm going to do this. What I mean? There was no ill intentions. You know what I mean? But it really wrecked my trust with my parents and myself, and my sibling, my sister, and it took a very long time for all of us to finally say, hey, look, I'm not lying anymore. Like, I'm really trying to be honest with you about this. And everything was questioned, even into my early 30s. You know what I mean? Either it was how I was still being perceived at the time, but since I started putting in the work, a lot of that has changed, a lot of that has calmed down. I've been able to go back and say, you know what, that situation really was started by me, and I do apologize. you know, and the ability to say you're sorry is so important if you know that you're in the wrong. You know what I mean? But that's what those checklist manifestos that I go through, that I was talking about briefly, that's what I do. I really go through and say, okay, well, what brought about this? Okay, maybe I shouldn't have called this early. I do have to apologize for that. But they didn't come off as being very receptive to that. Was there something else that's going on with them that I should know? You know what I mean? Like, that's actually very good for me, because I'm able to outwardly articulate what they might be feeling, and then it increases the empathy coming from me. And I've always been an empathetic person. It's just I wasn't able, again, to articulate that. And a lot of this, I think, is definitely going to help me with that.
Why else was that?
Why? I think as a performer, I was just very confused, switching roles, dancing. You're looking at yourself in a mirror for more than 4 to 5 hours at a time a day. That does things to you mentally, like looking at your physical body, seeing how you are. Perfectionism, rehearsal, get it right. Notes after note after note. This is wrong. That, and you go through, dance school institution. You go through the high school I went to was the Fame School. If you're familiar with the movie Fame, all about the High School of Performing Arts in New York City, that's where I went. Yeah. You get a lot of that training, and then you go for a BFA in musical theater, and you get note after note, you get this after this, so you're constantly bombarded with doing things wrong and very little of how you're doing it right, So I think that had a lot to do with it. So
constant outside criticism and then inward criticism at yourself.
Right, and I have always, and still am, very hard on myself, and we'll get into that when it comes to broadcasting. With my art and with my creative side, I think that I'm able to take the notes now and be able to write them down and see where the contradictions lie and say, you know what, they were right, I wasn't on my game today, let me pick it up tomorrow and rehearse it. And stay up a little bit later if I have to, you know what I mean? And just get the job done, get it done. The best part about I kind of lost my train of thought there. Okay, so yeah, the best part about my training, though, allowed me to broadcast as easily as I did. Like, for me, I just have to learn all of the behind the scenes stuff, the technical side. And you were saying it to who was your chatter before Polly? Or the musician, what was her name?
Erin,
yeah, so you were speaking to Erin about learning all the tech stuff behind broadcasting, and that's kind of where I need to pick it up just a little bit more and get a little bit more information and expertise, if you will, experience under my belt, so I could be able to, not only properly market, but also just to continue to be myself. I'm just very comfortable with just being who I am. You know what I mean? And I'm not really in a position to say, I'm gonna put on my broadcasting facade. I'm a pretty happy guy when it comes to knowing that I'm in charge of my own happiness. You know what I mean? I'm pretty much like that.
I was going to say, actually, at the time, when Aaron, I think it was Aaron that mentioned it, I was gonna be like, yeah, I literally just don't have the spoons to be anyone else but myself. I couldn't imagine myself being anyone else. I'm already pretty great at being me, and I like being me, so I'm just gonna continue to be me. That seems easier.
And I think your first chatter, I caught them halfway through, and they said something awesome, which was nobody can pretend to have a facade for more than 6 months. Yeah. I'd be happy to see a 19-year-old try to carry that on for more than 3 weeks. Because you yourself are gonna get bored and tired of trying to do it, and I totally feel for them. This is a book that I'm going to be reading, and it's going to hopefully help me to be a little bit more of an effective father creatively. This is by Rebecca Rowland. It's called The Art of Talking with Children: The Simple Keys to Nurturing Kindness, Creativity, and Confidence in Kids. So for about 11 years of my life, I worked for a company in New York where it was a children's enrichment facility turned preschool. And I was a team manager for a while. I did classes, I did birthday parties. I gained a very invaluable wealth of knowledge of how to be around children, knowing the difference between loving children and loving to teach children. When the pandemic hit, all of that career building stopped dead in its tracks. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was just like, you know what, this isn't for me. But I did gain a lot of knowledge on that front. But when it came to doing it at home, that was a little bit more difficult for me. So this book was literally just released and I picked it up from the company I work for. And this is definitely going to be another one on my to-read list. So I've got 3 books so far in this pile that are on my to-read list. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into that. And I think it's important for me as a father to teach my child empathy and to still have the strength to get through his day. And then subsequently my daughter, who will be born in just about 2 months. So yeah, it's
Congrats, by the way.
Cool. Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're really excited. We picked a name and everything. We're starting to do some nesting around the house and getting my son prepped. It's pretty awesome. So
it's adorable.
It's
I think it really speaks to how great of a father you are because you're being so proactive about wanting to make sure that you become the best father possible and, like, you know, teach your son and your daughter and any kids that you might have as well in the future, you know, empathy and stuff and just feeling for other people. It's so important. Like, emotional intelligence is a very, in my opinion, I feel like it's a very overlooked skill that folks don't have, and I know especially kids who are raised as male often aren't really taught emotional intelligence at all. So they grow up to be very, unfortunately, emotionally broken, and as a result, you know, a lot of women feel like they have to just do nothing but emotional labor for their male friends or for their, like, future partners because it's like they don't know how to process their any emotion other than super happy or angry.
Yeah, it's a very much it is what it is kind of way. You know, you have to get up and go to work and do this.
Yeah,
and,
man.
You know, it's a very like it's a very industrial revolution way of raising your children. You know, like the mother raises the child, I win the bread, and you're just supposed to put it all together. You know, and that those kinds of ways of thinking are still unfortunately running a little bit rampant, and I've seen a lot of that here on Twitch and across the internet because, you know, people just aren't, I guess they're not properly informed of looking at other ways of thinking. I
personally feel, as a mental health professional, I personally feel that a big part of it is people's unwillingness to self-examine, and then even once they become aware of that, they become very what's the word? They become very anxious about it, so they have that moment of kind of unresolved, you know, they think this way and they know these things logically, but, you know, they do and act a different way. What is that called? Cognitive dissonance. There's a cognitive dissonance that they have about how they know that the way that they're acting is not in line with their beliefs about something, or they're shown a different way of thinking. And usually what happens, and this occurs in every single identity development cycle, if you study anything about identity developments, where there's just a rejection. It's a rejection, and, you know, there might be a little bit of questioning, but then it's a rejection and then a return to the norm. And they continue to be toxic to themselves and to others, and it cycles for quite a while,
right,
until they feel like safe enough to break out of that, and,
you know, I heard
grow and develop, because it's uncomfortable to change. It's uncomfortable, and they're not comfortable with the uncomfortable, so they just reject anything new, and they're like, no, fuck that. I'm just gonna be angry and mean and whatnot. So
yeah, I heard someone once say, looking back is a bitch, ain't it? And I'm thinking to myself, I gotta laugh because here I am. I'm a man of nostalgia, and all I do is talk about way back. and actually that that kind of seeps into my philosophy of how I, procure and produce my own entertainment, is that, the whole reason I'm doing it is because I want to find out why we're nostalgic for this. Is there something deeper rooted individually or through society that we all collectively or individually choose to remember these things?
Can I apologize to you, by the way, formally on stream?
No, what? About what?
I'd like to apologize the first time that I interacted with you because I was a bit cheeky.
Oh.
Because
I didn't catch that.
I know you didn't catch it, but I was cheeky, and I want to apologize to you because you asked on stream because this is what you do, why do we remember? And I just try to type up an intellectual answer about it's this.
Oh no,
Here's the answer. You're welcome. Done. Your whole stream's over. Career ended.
No. I was fine with it. You know what? Actually, I enjoyed that because it is that simple. And I think it's the simplicity of it.
It is simplicity. Just people like it.
Well, I like to keep it. Yeah, I like to keep it simple. It's. I think, which actually brings me to one of the other books. I'm going to try and get through these and then get through broadcasting and how it correlates with my mental health. So these 3 are quote books that I like to read often. 2 of them are by John Cena, professional wrestler, now peacemaker. He wrote 2 books. One is for kids and one is for adults. One is called Be a Work in Progress, and the other is Do Your Best Every Day to Do Your Best Every Day. So sure. I always kind of looked up to his work ethic. You know what I mean? Because the guy's just relentlessly hardworking, and I look up to that. And this other one is Striking Thoughts, quotes by Bruce Lee. I'm very much into his whole.
I remember this book.
Yeah, this is a great book. He has this really beautiful, great, famous quote about being water, and that water forms into whatever it's poured into.
Yes.
That's how I tap dance. I'm not quite sure how to explain that other than to do it. You know what I mean?
I understand it emotionally. I understand what you're saying emotionally.
So it's kind of like I'm not an expert in a lot of things, and I'm never going to give advice on how to do something because I feel like I haven't gotten there yet. But when it comes to tap dancing, I will give you that look, being like, okay, let me show you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the one thing in my existence that I can honestly say, this is what I can do really well.
Hell yeah.
And speaking of back to basics, these are 2 very practical books, very basic books. One is Positive Psychology, and the other is called Body Language.
Yes.
Very back to basic books. Positive psychology is when you're upset, go for a walk. When you're feeling like this, try this. You know what I mean? Very very elementary when it comes to it, so this is a great starter book for somebody who feels angsty or just upset most of their day about just grouchy, I should say. If you're feeling very grouchy, this is more your 101 on how to change your way of perceiving things. And then this actually helped me out a lot in how I interact when it comes to business and professionalism when speaking to producers or speaking to any leaders or managers or bosses, because I was a manager myself at one point. Body language is really good. It's just understanding nonverbal messages, how to convey those yourself. Those kinds of images are really telling when it comes to specific types of work. But when it comes to broadcasting and Twitch and YouTube and even podcasts, I don't really mind having to adhere to this too much when watching somebody else. But when it comes to me, I feel like my presentation has a lot to do with how I'm perceived and how I'm going to be perceived for the future, because the internet never forgets. So that also ties into a lot of my anxiety, which we'll get into in 2 minutes. Then these are kind of fun books for me because I'm really into the subject. This is called Bushido, the Samurai Code of Japan, which is basically 7 principles: rectitude, courage, benevolence, politeness, honesty, honor, and loyalty. So this book kind of breaks down all of that. And then these 2 books kind of add more on to that. So this book is called Hagakure, and this one is called The Book of the 5 Rings and Other Works. and these can all be found under Tuttle. I really like Tuttle. It does definitely bridge a lot of Eastern thinking with the Western world. And it's really cool because for my life, I'm definitely in that Zennial pocket where I had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. So a lot of my perception of culture, luckily for me, I had au pairs coming into my house from different countries every year or so. So I was able to be very cultured as a child, which actually helped a lot. Was it a bit of a detriment to my relationship with my parents later in years? Yes, it did take me a little bit longer to establish a stronger, trusting bond with my parents as a result, but that was just the time. You know what I mean? It was that both parents worked, you know? So these kinds of books are really cool to merge those kinds of worlds of thought for me. It's really interesting. And then the final books that I have are all of the Rhonda Byrne books. And if you're not familiar with Rhonda Byrne, she wrote The Secret, which is, of course, you know, the law of attraction. And then the subsequent books, which is The Power, The Magic, and then The Greatest Secret. I like this bottom book the best. The Greatest Secret talks about awareness. Are you aware? Like, it's a little overwhelming for me because I'm still trying to nail that concept down, because the ability for me to maintain a focus of my own mortality also battles with my sense of present awareness. You know what I mean? Like, am I really here, or am I still thinking about like this Billy Joel show on Zoom that I want to do in the next year and a half, which is really cool. It's separate from Nostalgia Alchemist. It's all Jeremy Lardieri. I'm very excited about it.
That sounds like an amazing time.
Yeah, and actually the show is based, of course, around the music of Billy Joel, taking one song from each of his 13 albums and putting it together as the journey of my mental health.
Ooh, I love that.
So I'll send you in. It's probably going to be like $5 a Zoom link, and when I put it all together, I'll send it to you. I'll send it your way.
I'd pay 20. My God.
Thank you. But yeah, so that's the project I'm working on outside of the Nostalgia Alchemist, and my subsequent LLC that I'm going to create, which is going to be called Garblemesh Entertainment LLC. I'm trying to put that together. It's just a made-up word. I figured, you know what, why try to use a word that's already in the dictionary where I could just make up my own? And it's a garble mesh of entertainment. That's what I'm going to be putting out. So it's kind of cheeky, it's kind of fun, but it's going to be like my LLC umbrella for all of the trademarks that I want to make. So I love it. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, let's take everything that we just did here and double back to broadcasting.
Yes.
So
please.
How does all this correlate with broadcasting? How do I collect all this information and put it into broadcasting and take that strength, take the strength that I'm building for my mental health and putting it onto the internet? Like I said with Erin, I picture a room. I don't have my viewer count up, and when someone comes in and says, "Oh, your view count's low, so I decided I'd just come and check you out," I kind of ignore that because that's just empty to me.
Weird.
I see broadcasting talk, or I guess you could call it "quote unquote" streamer talk.
Streamer Twitter.
I don't need that to be part of this conversation because that conversation's already been had.
Yeah.
Too many times over. So I don't want to talk about that stuff.
That's fair.
What I want to talk about is my relationship with the beast of the internet.
Yes, please.
So the internet never forgets. So your anxiety is going to build. You don't have to use your real name, but people are going to come down on you. Doja Cat just quit music because of the internet. She's like, I don't have to do this for you. I quit. But then we bring up a question of, is she letting that really get to her, or is she just honestly like done trying so hard to be so perfect? That's a very difficult question to answer, because all people see on the internet is a finished product. Not a lot of people see the process. Not a lot of people see how long it takes to get things done. I've got a perfect example. A streamer, well, I don't like to say the word streamer either, because I'm kind of on my own personal mission to merge movies, television, radio with internet entertainment, because it's all becoming one big entertainment conglomerate anyway. So instead of calling myself a I cringe when I say a content creator. I'm an entertainer.
Sure.
Period.
I mean,
that's what I am.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's what we all are.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
That's what I've said before.
Twitch is television. This is what it is. We are broadcasting live from my living room.
Yeah.
It's the Nostalgic Alchemist. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so this is
sure.
exactly what it is. It doesn't have to be so deep. It doesn't have to be too deep rooted. It's keeping it back to its simplest form. What we're doing right now
entertainment.
It's television. It's entertainment. So, being an entertainer, trained being an entertainer, and then doing this was a little bit more seamless to me than it might have been for a couple of other people who might not have been very comfortable on camera, not really knowing how to conduct themselves, not properly, but just how to conduct themselves when speaking with people. Right. Sometimes it takes a long time for people to get used to playing a game and talking at the same time. Definitely, I was definitely in that part of the book. Yeah, it definitely is a skill, and a lot of acquired skills that I took on. I just did through practice, through rehearsal. It's basically rehearsal. It's developmental. Everything that you're doing, every step that you take is developmental. Even if you have a good broadcast, if you have a bad broadcast, write it down. Was today a good one or was today a bad one? You don't even have to go into details. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think it did? Okay, I think a 2. But don't base it on how many views you got. Don't base it on not getting subscribers. Don't base it on if you got, unfortunately, hate rated. Don't base it on how you're feeling, because you're in charge of that. And there's nothing else that you can control in this world except for yourself. You know, you can't control other people. You can, luckily, with things on the internet like blocks and bans and deletions and things like that, you are able to have some semblance of control. Yeah. But then, of course, there's doxing, and that can get very dangerous, and you want to be careful. But a guy like me, my name is already out there on the internet, so there's no place for me really to hide. So I am Jeremy Lardieri, and I am the Nostalgia Alchemist. To some people, that's one thing. To other people, it's like, all right, Jeremy's working on something new. Let's go. But for broadcasting, this is great. I love it. I love to be able to do this kind of interaction, even if it's just with words on a screen. I have to kind of visualize, like, you know, what does this person sound like? Where are they? What kind of environment are they in? There's a lot of people out there, but I like doing that because it makes it a lot more personable. It makes it a lot more connecting. And not to self-plug again, but I think me changing my brand over is going to actually help with me being a lot more personable, because I am the Nostalgia Alchemist. It's not I'm Jeremy Lardieri and I'm presenting my brand. It's Nostalgic Magic. You know what I mean? So I'm able to connect more. I'm able to.
There's more of the personal connection. It's more exact, you know, one-to-one personal. Like, this is who I am. This is how I identify myself as. So
but also that I can listen. I'm listening. You know what I mean? That to me is a lot more important, because my ability to listen has skyrocketed since I started broadcasting, believe it or not. I've actually become a better and more effective listener doing this than I have in some of my acting classes, which is really crazy because I spent $36,000 a year to try to learn how to do that. You know what I mean? So
the thing with acting is that I don't think acting teaches you to listen. Acting teaches you to react on time.
In a way. I mean, I can get into a whole other topic on this, but I mean, when it comes to listening, that's the whole reason why I don't think my skills got as sharp as they could, because I wasn't able to effectively listen. There's a great quote that my acting teacher, I'm going to drop his name. His name was Rick Stoppelworth. He had a great thing that he used to say in all of our acting classes, and he used to just say, just shut up and listen to what you're saying. I was like, what? That's amazing. I love that. And only now at the age of 36 does that make sense. And it's wonderful. It's brilliant. So my listening skills have exponentially increased while doing broadcasting, because when I started to do things like, you know, your mental health Mondays and going on to Wrecked Wizards podcast and being able to sit and really take things in, I I really understood a lot of how I wanted to answer back, how I wanted to receive, recall, and then convey. My articulation and my conveyance have increased a lot, and that also helps with me mentally, but my anxiety gets in the way sometimes. And here's where this comes into play. When somebody comes into the chat room and they start to like badmouth my son because they hate kids and they don't want to see them on their screen,
What the fuck?
that's an immediate ban.
That's a immediate ban, right?
Well,
Yeah.
not and there are going to be broadcasters out there that have the guts to respond back and then ban and start the argument.
No, ban first.
They're not worth another
They're not
word.
worth your
They're not worth
time.
another moment of my time, because I don't want to say anything that couldn't stand as the last thing I ever said. I'll repeat that. I don't want to say anything that couldn't stand as the last thing I've ever said. So why am I going to berate somebody who's a complete stranger, who's telling me how to live my life, when easily, with the click of a button, I not only have control of the situation, but I have control over me. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think a lot of people who are beginning to learn how to broadcast should employ into, again, a checklist for themselves. I love checklists. I think they're great. I think that it just lines everything up so nicely and so neatly for a person, and you can put it up on a wall. I have a bunch of stuff up here behind where you can't see that has like ADHD top 7, what my 7 principle Bushido, the 5 keys of longevity, the 3 Zen minds, how to overcome martyr syndrome, which is something that I really had to get over. Martyr syndrome, just the pity party, the constant feeling sorry for yourself. Like,
Right.
it just it describes people who perceive themselves in a constant state of self-sacrifice, and I just didn't want to have that pity party anymore. So I got over it. You know, like, those are the kinds of things that I put up on my wall so I can see it every day when I come into work on this, that help with all of that. In a social situation outside of here, it's a little bit trickier because we have been in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of people's social skills have either been lacking or taken it back, or people are trying new things. And, you know, we're all trying to refigure it out. You know what I mean? It's the allegory of the cave all over again. It's like, you know, oh, I'm telling you, like, the sun is real and there's no monsters. It's this little cardboard thing that these 3 other guys are, you know, and the other people are looking at you being like, what are you talking about? Like, no, we can't go out there. You know what I mean? Like, so a lot of how I perceive broadcasting is like that. You know, you're coming in and you don't know who I am. You know, I kind of give people like, hey, this is who I am. And if you want to look me up, please go ahead. Like, I tap dance, I do this, I do that, you know, but not everybody is like that. Not a lot of people have that kind of training and entertainment. They just want to broadcast, play video games, and talk to people. I mean, I think that that's beautiful, because if you're the kind of person who's entertaining, then by all means, go for it. Do it. I don't think you should fear the other side, though. Don't fear chat. Don't fear it. A lot of times, and I think I quoted it, I quoted it a couple of hours ago in your chat over here, Waba. Over prepare and go with the flow.
Yes.
So if you over prepare yourself and just say, you know what, it may happen, it may not. What are my steps?
Right.
People have stream decks where they have panic buttons. I think that's a great idea. I should set that up myself. People have mods who know exactly what to do, but they had a meeting with those people and they said, hey, you know, it would probably be a really great idea if we like set these parameters up if this should happen. How do we respond as mods when somebody comes in who we don't agree should be here? Not even in a community. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about you being a human being and how you're going to treat another human being who's being terrible. You don't know who they are. You don't know how old they are. That's the first thing you should know. How old is this person? They might be 11 and sneaking behind someone's back, has an account, and is just trying to troll. You don't know who's on the other side. You don't know. So how are we as broadcasters, and how are our mods, and how are our over preparation of dealing with those hate raids and the negativity and people who we don't know. How do we deal with that? That's the over preparation, and that lessens the anxiety, that quells it, especially when it comes to this. A lot of times I find myself, when I see someone say racist American, I'm like, ban. What? You don't know me. You don't know who I am. Like, that's not an opinion. That's just words. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, sticks and stones. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing. Whatever. I'm 36. Like, I lived my life. A lot of people have lived their life. But a lot of people who are starting this just coming out of high school or you know, college, or who just aren't, I guess, what's the maturity? I guess it's a maturity level.
There definitely is a maturity level.
Yeah, I mean, I was 17 and I was still behaving like I was in 8th grade. You know, it took me a very long time to find a sense of my own maturity. And I tell my son, no, I don't think you're mature enough to play that video game. You can play these games, but you can't play this games. You're not mature enough. Some people, like the ESRB, say you're not old enough to play this game yet. I think it's a maturity level. You're not mature yet to play Smash Brothers. I mean, there's a lot of fun, comical, cartoon-looking characters that my son sees, and he's like, I want to watch you play Smash Brothers. I'm like, you're not mature enough yet. You can play with the figurines and perceive how you think the game would be played, but I'm not going to let him play it. He's not mature yet.
Sure.
And I think that maturation comes with experience and time, but me, I'm not going to respond negative back to the other side if someone says or claims I'm a racist American, because I don't know who they are. I don't know how old they are. I don't know what kind of composition or mental constitution they're under. I have no idea. So why am I going to jeopardize my reputation by responding back negatively when I could easily just say, click, done, let's resume, and not say a word? It's their word against theirs. In a court of law, their word against theirs. They typed it. You know, like it's like when you get in a car accident, don't say a word, just ask for license and registration.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't say a word. You just ask for license and registration, and then one of you decides to call 911. And if the other person says, but you're going to say it's your fault, right? And I just say, who's calling 911? You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. It's their word against theirs. If they want to hate, let them do it. I'm not going to respond.
And you shouldn't.
No.
Because responding just baits it out more.
Yeah, and it drags it out.
And it shouldn't be an argument. You know, if someone says something like that, and it's just like, I didn't say anything that was like remotely racially charged. Like,
yeah. You know who's brilliant at doing it, but I just is Alex Naramaki.
Yeah.
watching her work. You know,
I love
like
Alex.
Let's turn it outward now. Watching certain broadcasters work, me full well knowing that they're not trained in the arts, and me finding entertainment in watching how they put everything together is wonderful. I think it's so much fun. I think it's great because you're getting people to shine in a light that they never thought possible. I'm enamored by people's ability to tap into the full potential of who they truly are.
Hell yeah.
It's so cool, isn't it? Like really, like I'm geeking
really
out over it.
freaking
Like
cool.
I just love people like seeing them come into their own. So cool.
No, I agree. I think a lot of people have found solace and success in streaming when the pandemic hit because, you know, they were already really great at talking to people and making friends and, you know, being an entertaining person already as it is. So it just all fit together really well, and they found that community, you know, fairly quickly. Or people spread them because, you know, they were simple or they were entertaining. It just works out.
Yeah, it does. It does work out. You and I have about 13 minutes left. I wanted to ask Chad if there were any questions. I do have a couple of more points to bring up if there are no more questions, or Waba, if you have a question for me.
Yes.
You do. Go for it. Do it.
How has your mental health affected your content creation?
Oh yeah, that's right. The whole purpose we're here. Okay. So we've got 13 minutes. I I think it's affected my ability to take dancing and put it on a screen in still form. You know what I mean? Like it's marketing. You know what I mean? I think mentally I'm like sitting in a chair. I'm not moving all day. I gained weight during the pandemic. And that really wore me down. I felt lethargic. I felt overweight. Sure. I just was like, ugh, you know, like I felt like a blob. That's really how I felt. And then one day I was just like, you know what? I got to be more active with this creation. I got to be a little bit more like, what can I do to get myself up and running? Oh, you know what? I think I'll do something with my Nintendo Power collection and I'll just put it on TikTok. So my mental state coming in to creating like that is it started off, like I said, very lethargic, very much like, okay, I have all the time in the world. I'm just going to sit here and just kind of play with things that work or don't work. And that just got very boring very quickly. So that when I had the idea of doing something like that for TikTok, things took off. I said, okay, 2 or 3 times a week, I'm going to create for TikTok because I have a breadth of a collection to just pull an issue out and just do something fun with it in half an hour. You know what I mean? Like that gets the creative juices flowing, like looking at the color, looking at the subject matter, like what can I do with this like magazine issue and how can I do something with it? And mentally I'm like, okay, we're putting the dopamine in. We're getting like the gears turning again. Okay, this is really good. When I'm staring at a screen for game day in November for Extra Life, I'm staring at the screen for 22 hours a day and I beat the game, but at what cost? You know, I'm going to definitely break up my broadcasting like that for 12-hour increments. That mentally messes with you. After that broadcast, I did a cooking broadcast, which was a lot of fun, but then I took 2 months off. Because I needed to just get back to macro. I needed to get back to the why. If I'm here for whenever you remember why am I still doing this in the first place? February 2021, I threw my headphones down live on a broadcast and said, I quit. I'm not doing this shit anymore. You know, to be very blunt. I don't like to cuss or swear too much. But anyway, that's my choice. I don't want to do this shit anymore.
Sure.
And people saw that live and they're like, what? This is very unbecoming of you. What is going on?
Right.
It was around the time when people were starting to try to get back to work. There was no more stimulus left. People were leaving. Numbers were down and all this metric BS.
It is metric BS because you trick yourself. You trick yourself to think that equals your value, and it does not.
Right, exactly. And my worth is not that. My worth is my time spent training. Hi, Annie. My time was spent training so that I don't have to feel like that in front of people. I would totally do that like off camera if I was really feeling that. My wife will help me pick me up because she knows. But that's my temper. And I knew I had to quell that quick. And I said to myself, I do want to be myself, but that version of myself, I don't think is worth people's time, but it's there. And I have to be honest about that.
You do. Absolutely.
I can't.
If you deny, man, this goes back to a rant I had Thursday. Yeah. If you deny your own emotions, if you deny your own feelings, if you deny your own inner struggles and what you're most like afraid of about yourself, then you betray yourself. You betray yourself, and it's just going to weigh on you constantly. And until you go out and actually address it, it's just going to keep plaguing you.
Yeah, and that plague is like it's so taxing on your emotions, and that's when you spiral, and that's when the glass and that happens. You know,
the title of that cast was "It's okay to not be okay."
Yeah,
but then what? You know, like what do you do?
Now, here's the other thing, Waba. My professional entertainment training taught me how to be perceived from an audience while still retaining who I am as a person, who I am as Jeremy Lardieri. And that's why on that specific day last year in February, I said to myself, I can feel defeated, but I don't think everyone needs to see that. I know who I can talk to about that. You know what I mean? But not everyone has to see it. But I think it's everyone's ability to understand that it's there is the more important conversation to have. I do want to tell people, hey, look, today I'm just not up to it. They don't need to know why, but I'm just, I'm going to give you 110% of who I am every time I want to broadcast, because you're worth it. You know what I mean? Like you're worth it to me. You're worth that to me. Like your time is just as valuable as my time because you're choosing to spend it with me.
Absolutely true. Absolutely
That
true.
feels so good.
It feels good and it feels powerful, and it's a moment of just like, wow, people decided to spend their time with me today.
It's a reaffirmation of your why.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we only have a couple of minutes left, but I do want to sing your praises though for doing these mental talks and everything, because I haven't been able to tune into a lot of my friends that I've made here on this platform very much, but you are appreciated so much for doing these by a lot of people, and I've noticed it because you do it in a way that it becomes an outlet for people who might not be able to afford their own personal therapist. They're able to hear stories. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's therapeutic.
Right. And it's therapeutic in a way that is safe for them because they don't have to feel the necessity of chatting about it. They're just able to listen. And that kind of personal relation that they have with themselves, it gets stronger, and it gets it gets to a point where they can handle things. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you for just continuing to do these, and it's awesome. It's really cool. Yeah, of course. And that's and there's a why behind it,
Yes, there is. It's a very intentional thing.
That's the same with me. So, I'm not here to give advice. You know what I mean? Because I am in no position, and I will never give advice if I was never asked for it. Sure. You know what I mean? In a lot of situations. I mean, look, friggin' Dolly Parton turned down the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because she said, hey, look, I haven't made a rock album, but I'm glad you see me in that light. But I just don't think I've earned that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So for me, like, I can give you my experiences and what I'm thinking, but I'm not going to give an individual advice unless they physically and personally ask for it. That's me. I'm not going to go onto any platform and say, I'm the Nostalgia Alchemist and I think you should do this. What engaging, whatever. It's all empty to me because it's all been done. I'm just going to do what I think is right for my why. My why is I want to find out why we're nostalgic for stuff. It doesn't have to be pop culture. It could be anything. It could be wooden playgrounds. It could be plastic bags floating in the wind with things that are written on it. It could be anything. It could be card games. You know what I mean? Like, it could be anything. But my why and why I perform is because as long as I know I have made someone's day better, that's where it counts for me. The true measure of a human being is how they treat someone who could do them absolutely no good. That is my philosophy. I'll say it one more time. The true measure of a human being is how they treat someone who could do them absolutely no good. You could call it a golden rule, but to me, it's just placing value where value is due. And I value you. And I'm looking in the camera to everybody who's watching on this broadcast right now. I value you. I value your input. I value your notes. I value your criticism, both positive and negative, because I might not respond to it because I just choose not to as the executive producer and showrunner of my own brand and my own company, but I'm reading and I'm listening because that's going to help me be a better entertainer for you. And that's what counts for me. Yeah.
Couldn't agree further.
Yeah.
You matter, Chad, and thank you for being here. And I do see everything. So
And chat, thanks again for listening to me talk with Waba and talk about all these books and whatever. And it's been a pleasure, as always.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'll see you
Waba,
next time.
You're awesome.
You're awesome. Shush.
I am so excited to actually hear our next guest. Annie is awesome. I've only gotten to see and chat with them a couple of times, but they're just so cool. So I'm going to stick around and chat, everybody. So
Annie is great.
Thanks for the shout out, Waba. I really appreciate it.
Of course, always. Go check out Jeremy. All right. All right.
Take care, everybody, and take care of yourself and each other. Bye.
Bye.
Come catch Waba live only on Twitch.